Hello students, good morning to all. We are in our class discussing discourse analysis and the two modes of language, speech and writing. In our last class, we discussed that speech has certain functions to do in our communication. There are particular situations in communication where speech is preferable than writing. And then there are certain conditions of communication where the written form is preferable or practical than the spoken form. But we also found that with the advancement in science, new devices have come with us with which these specialties are diminished. Now, those special functions which were associated with written form, the permanence of expression, that thing is even possible with my spoken words. If I record my speech on a tape or nowadays in digital form, then it becomes as permanent as a written word on a paper. Similarly, the direct and immediate communication, direct and immediate feedback, which were special qualities of spoken form, because in written form, if I have written a letter to you, first it will take weeks, days to reach you. Then if there is any question from you, any clarity you are seeking, you will have to write it back to me. It will reach to me and I will clarify and write and send you. You will receive it again more couple of days. So that immediate feedback and immediate communication was possible only when we are talking face to face in verbal communication. But now in our this chatting using WhatsApp, we can write something and send you. You will get it immediately as if you are sitting just in front of me, and then you will reply or you will seek clarification or you will give your reaction immediately, and I will get it in no time. But if we remove the technical support, then still writing has its own special work to do and speech has its own special duties to do. That we should not forget. So we can say that that is not the question whether written form is better for us than the spoken form. There is no such question. But still the difference of form is there. So in our this class, we are going to discuss the linguistic differences between these two forms. How these two forms are different from one another. So our topic is the linguistic qualities of speech and writing. Every form has its own linguistic qualities. These are a couple of points to understand the matter. You can add your own points. So we can say that the difference in form is only because of the difference in medium, because every medium has its own special linguistic qualities. What are the linguistic qualities? When I speak, I use intonation, I use stress, and with the help of these things, with the help of my body language, with the help of my eye movement, you can get the exact message from me. So the communication is complete. To complete my communication, I change the rhythm of my speech. I add my hand movements, my eye movements, or my facial expression to make that communication complete. So spoken language has rhythm, intonation, and non-linguistic sounds. Non-linguistic sounds mean oh, all these things. These are non-linguistic sounds, but they play very important role in our communication. Some are indications of agreeing, yes, and some are indications of showing your amazement or sympathy or these things. But these are not in the written form. Non-verbal communication is possible in spoken language but not in the written language. Similarly, writing has some other features which are not there in spoken form. For example, making of sentences, paragraphs, use of capital letters, capitalization, use of punctuation marks. These things are not in my speech. Actually, so far as punctuation marks are concerned, I can say that my flow, my intonation, my surprise, my seeking, asking a question, seeking an answer, these things which I produce the effect of changing my tone in speech can be produced using punctuation marks in written language. But in spoken language, I do not use punctuation marks. So, punctuation marks are devices to introduce mood and intonation in written form. But the use of capital letters, then the mark of interrogation, then the change of topic, the change of point. In speech, these things are performed by change of tone or by stopping or by just making some non-verbal signs. Now we take these points one by one. So these are the linguistic qualities of speech and writing. And what we say? We say that speech is less clear than writing. How is it? In other words, I can say that anything written is generally clear in itself. When we read stories, we do not ask questions because everything is before us clear. If you read an essay, after reading that thing, all your doubts, all your clarities, all your questions will be cleared. Though there may be certain questions in your mind, but even these things can be answered if you read that thing again. But in speech, there is no burden upon me to be clear, to be so damn clear. Why? Because I know if there is any unclarity, if there is any doubt in your mind, you are there to ask me question immediately. And then there is one another point, that is the pre-reference. When we start a talk, just in the beginning, we set up the subject of the talk, and in our further talking, we need not refer to that subject again and again. We may use pronoun for that place, and sometimes even we omit both subject in its name or in its pronoun form. We just talk ऐसा करता है, वैसा करता है, so lucky, so bad, and we can understand what we are talking about, whom we are talking about. That is possible only when we are speaking. So in speech, both the auditory and visual media are available to support and clarify the communication. Body language and gestures, they clarify the communication completely. Similarly, already shared information and immediate feedback remove the burden of exact clarity from the speaker. We are free, we speak freely. There is no need to revise what I have spoken on my part, because I know if there is anything wrong, if there is anything unclear, you are going to ask me. But if I am to communicate in written form, I will have to be careful to make my writing as clear as possible. Why? Remember, we are just talking about the conditions of those earlier days. We are not discussing that I am writing on WhatsApp and then I am worried about to be clear. No, that is just equal to direct communication. If I am to write you a letter, in that letter I will have to be clear about every point. In that condition, we are talking about these linguistic qualities, these linguistic differences, that in spoken form, I need not be exactly clear in my every sentence. But if I write, I must be clear with my every word, with my every sentence. That's why we say that speech is less clear and written form is generally more clear. Second point, there is no clear sentence boundary in speech. In speech, we do not say full stop, we do not say comma. I just keep on speaking. and with the change in my tone, with the change of my short stop, with the change of my some non-verbal movements, we can understand these things, that now the topic is changed, now he has started talking about something else, now he has finished, it is my turn to speak. We can understand these things. In written form, I will have to form my sentences, I will have to put similar ideas in one paragraph, and if I change the paragraph, it means that I have changed the point, I have changed the topic. So, sentence is unit of written language. In speech, there are no full stops, capital letters, or punctuation marks. Spontaneous spoken language has non-clausal units, phrases, or words which are not like parts of the clause in grammatical sense. Clause is group of words. So when I speak, I use clause, but that clause is not exactly the clauses that we find in written form. In written form, we find exact positioning of every parts of speech, but that is not taken care of while we speak. In speech, we can change the placing of subjects, the placing of words. There is a reference to one linguist. Cart and McCarthy says that spoken language has a different grammar from written language. In speech, special structures are formed in parts because of the lack of planning and availability of time to the speaker. In speech, the use of and, but, and other gap fillers is common. Uh, mm, these things are the gap fillers. Thus, speech is less grammatical because speech is unedited and unplanned because of the procedure of immediate planning. What I am going to speak, I cannot plan beforehand in my mind. I speak certain group of words, then I speak another group of words, correlating them, making sense, combined sense using them. For the same reason, in speech, we are less tightly connected, we use less tightly connected structures, but if I write, I will have to make complete sentences which are accepted in its standard form. That is very much important for me to be careful about. Next point. The structure in speech is simple and loose. It is more complex and integrated in writing. We have come across a phrase that speech has its own grammar. That point is related to our that earlier second point, that spoken grammar is less complex than the written grammar because of the short time available to produce and process. In writing can be redrafted and reread. The average length of a written sentence is about 18 words. These are the expressions of, these are the ideas of linguists. They have done the survey, their study, and what they find that in written form, the average length of a written sentence is about 18 words. In contrast, the average length of an independent unit of grammar in speech is no more than 5 or 6 words. When we speak only 5 or 6 words as a group. That becomes my one piece of speech. In other words, we can say that becomes my clause. Then I use another 3, 4 or 5 or 6 words. I cannot speak continuously. It is the limitations because of our breathing. But and then as we are expert in creating the meaning of spoken words, you can understand what I mean. You can correlate those groups together and understand my meaning. But if I am to write these things, I will have to put the words at proper places according to the grammar. Remember, when I speak, I do not defy the rules of grammar. But here the rules of grammar are working in not that much strict way as in the written form. This is not to say that spoken grammar is always simple. It has its own complexity. For example, frequent use of certain phrases as I think, did you know, or the use of tag question, or even the refrain of words. But they do not cause any serious complexity. The structure of spoken grammar is not necessarily simple. It has its own complexity, terms of subordinate or coordinate clause, but it does not cause difficulty in the processing of meaning. There is no demarcation like this is the principal clause of my speech, this is the subordinate clause of my speech. These things do automatically do in the course of in the process of understanding. The written language tends to have elaborated noun phrase and prepositional phrase and the proper placing of parts of speech. So the structure of written form is integrated, more integrated. Then vocabulary is repetitive and restricted in speech, which is not in writing. In writing, I tend to write new word every time I talk about any particular thing. But in speech, I repeat. Generally, my speech is limited to a lesser set of words. But if I set to write something, then I use a broader vocabulary even to describe the same thing. So we can say that speech is more repetitive than writing. Important information has to be repeated since the addressee cannot refer back to what has gone before in the spoken discourse. So the spoken discourse tends to be less densely packed per word than written text. That we have discussed about the average limit of words produced at a time. Nouns are rich in specific information and are high in frequency in written text, while pronouns are high in speech. In our spoken form, we use pronouns more than the nouns. So we can say that when we speak, I repeat certain words. In writing, I do not do that thing. Then speech has normal disfluency while writing has fluency. That is another quality that makes the difference between these two forms. Lack of fluency is normal in spontaneous speech. It results from the unprepared nature of speech and includes factors like hesitation, unintended repetitions, false starts, fillers, and unfinished sentences. If you ask someone to start speaking, generally you would say, let me think, give me some time. These things happen because when we speak, we do not have complete plan, complete draft what we are going to speak. Speech is just automatically. It comes out automatically in form of group of words. When we write, we have the time to read it, reread it, redraft it, change it. So, in this sense, we can say that when we speak, sometimes there are many gaps, there are many stoppages, but when I write a complete sentence. Next, speech has features of monitoring and interaction while they are absent in writing. These things are related to direct communication. So, monitoring and interaction are related to social dimensions of speech, that is, dialogue. Monitoring means the speaker's awareness of the addressee's presence and reaction and include some words of gestures. समझे ना क्यों देखो मैं कहता हूँ वो सुनो. All these things are my monitoring. I try to get your attention, and if I find that you are not attentive to what I say, I would say, listen, look here, here it is. These type of words I use because monitoring is possible in speech. Interaction means active participation of the addressee like questioning, yes, no, okay, oho, etc., or just by nodding. These are the interactions. If you do not do interactions, then my monitoring works that perhaps you are not listening to. When you continuously say yes, oh, I see, and you just keep on nodding your head, then it is an indication that you are actively listening to me. These features are not in the written form. However, in emails or in chat groups, these features are presented to some extent using the smileys. So these two functions, monitoring and interactions, are purely associated with speech. The features of speech show informality, while those of writing show formality. When we speak, we are generally less formal. When I write, we write formally. So, the situation in which speech is used are generally less formal than those in which writing is used. So it is just because of the change in tenor. We will discuss tenor and domain in our next class. Therefore, the language used in speech is informal both in words and in structures. For example, here, if you notice, I have spoken the word demon. We will discuss about demon, but immediately I have rectified me, so perhaps it went unnoticed. But suppose if I have written this word in my these notes, and you read those notes after some time, there will be no one to clarify. Then it will take time. You will ask me in written form and I will reply in written form. So rectification, correction is immediately possible in speech. So I am always tension free that if I have spoken something wrong, I will immediately rectify it. But if that thing has passed on to you in written form, then God save you. If you are not aware, you may take domain as demon. So for our this class, it is enough. In our next class, we will take our these demon means domain and tenor for our discussion. So thank you, students. Thank you very much for joining, and take care of your health. Stay safe and keep your near and dears also safe and secure. Thank you.